Before we jump into this week's episode of Major Pain, I will remind you that I am not a medical professional. Please do not take any medical action based off what you hear on this podcast without first consulting your doctor.
Medicine itself is kind of nebulous.
My brain is just wired differently.
You're feeling symptoms that the tests aren't showing exist.
People need to hear your story.
Welcome to Major Pain. I'm your host, Jesse Mercury, and this week I'm so excited to be joined by our guest, Justin Goodman. Welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you today. Let's get to know you a little bit before we jump into your story. So, Justin, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm 44, married with 3 kids, 2 in college, 1 still in high school. And love having family life, getting to interact with the kids. My passion forever has been golf. I'm an educator by trade. I was in the insurance space for years. And so ultimately the natural teacher in me kind of grew out of that. And so I now run an e-learning company. And for me, really, life has been about relationships, how I get to spend time with those I care about and pour into them, and then also be there when others need help as well. And I've been the beneficiary of much support in my life, so it's good to have opportunities to give that back every now and again.
Yeah, amazing. And from what I know of your story from when I first got an email about you, I'm so curious how your journey has interwoven with the life you just described. So let's jump into it. Justin, what is your major pain?
So I've got a condition called Scheuermann's disease, and it typically comes about in adolescence. And in my case, it came about rapidly and at a much more advanced rate than is typical. It's pretty rare in general, but it's very rare to happen as quickly as it did. And for me, the symptoms were significant pain, restriction of flow, and basically limiting every aspect of life. And for me, it was something, being a high-level golfer at the time, ultimately took me out of the sport. So it was an all-encompassing battle. And at the time, and this is 25 years ago, the solutions were limited. The solution was, Justin, there's this pretty elaborate surgery. We're going to cut you open both sides and we'll stop the progression, but you're still going to have the pain, but at least it won't advance past this. Or we can put you on narcotics and lots of them and just see how that goes. And for me, we opted the narcotic route, not because of a desire to necessarily be on narcotics, but because the surgeon actually wisely said, Justin, I want you coming in when you're crawling on the floor to me, you can't breathe, it's that bad, that's when we do surgery, because I'm not going to be able to make your quality of life that much better. I'm just trying to prevent progression in this scenario. And so for me, that struggle then became, we're now balancing narcotics, and that did not go well. So that's kind of the 411 on the condition. The plus side is many years later, through a number of different modalities, I've been able to avoid surgery and work through pain and do it in a drug-free way. But there's a few twists and turns along the way that got me there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I have tons of questions. First of all, Scheuermann's disease. Can you tell us more about Scheuermann's disease? What is it? What causes it? How does one acquire Scheuermann's disease?
So they think there's a genetic component to it. They're not entirely sure. There's not enough studies that have been done on exactly what the contributing factors. They think genetics, and potentially if you've had blunt force trauma, and I had genetic factors, and I had some football injuries as well that weren't necessarily helpful to the cause. But really what it is, if you've heard of obviously scoliosis, which is that curve like this. What Scheuermann's is that hunchback disease, or kyphosis, where that spine curves like, sorry, I'm speaking for anyone just listening. I'm speaking with my hands and showing curves on a monitor. But it's essentially that, if you've seen the Hunchback of Notre Dame, that's the end result if it progresses too far and too quickly.
Wow.
And where my condition was, and where it was advancing at the speed it was advancing, the concern was, we're going to be at that real hunchback stage. sooner rather than later. And so for those who ever struggle with any chronic back issue, once you start moving that needle with that spinal curvature, you're adding pounds and pounds of pressure, and every degree is just another level of pressure that your body has to resist against in order to stay upright. And so for me, as I was going through this, that was always the concern: is what does life look like when you can no longer tie your shoes, wipe yourself, those type of things that were the perceived inevitable path I was headed on at that time.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. Yeah, kyphosis I am familiar with. We did a great episode a while back with Billy about scoliosis and kyphosis, which is the first time I'd ever heard that word at all. So Scheuermann's disease is essentially kyphosis, and that is the curvature of the spine forward. So it's like your head is curving forward as your spine is adjusting over time. Maybe a genetic component, but it sounds like we don't necessarily know why this happens. It's just, it happened to you and then you have to deal with it. And I can only imagine you're in your mid-20s, it sounds like, when that starts.
I was actually 14.
14. Oh, wow. Okay. So how long between noticing symptoms and actually getting a diagnosis was that time period?
It took a couple years to get a diagnosis, mainly because we kept thinking I was just having growing pains.
Sure.
I was playing football and I was a short kid and I went through a growth spurt. And so the initial thought was, well, yeah, he's got growing pains that every kid's going to go through as they're going through puberty and whatnot. And then as that pain continued to get worse, they said, there's something else going on. We've got to do a deeper dive and figure out what it was. And I had already passed, in junior high, they'd have you do the scoliosis test. And at that point, I was fine. And so it took until I was 16, 17 to really get a handle on what was going on.
Okay. That's a young age to get a diagnosis like this. And like you said, what does the future hold? Any diagnosis like that where you're thinking about the future with uncertainty at any age is difficult. But to have it happen so young, that must have been a real challenge. I mean, what was going through your mind at that point?
Unfortunately for me, I was also the shy, introverted kid who I got attention for what I could do with a golf ball. And so it's the first time I felt like I was seen in life. And I was excelling at a rate that brought eyeballs on me, and I had next level abilities for playing at the collegiate level, not PGA level. But it was there was a next step that was in clear grasp, and to have that basically turned off and said, "Hey, that's no longer an option for you." To have that was devastating because I had made that so much of my identity as well.
Sure.
Where it was like finally the shy introverted kid gets noticed for something, right? And so it was pretty devastating, let alone the fact that as I was taking the narcotic medication, the socially anxious kid that I was, all of a sudden that anxiety dropped off because the painkillers made me feel normal, made me feel like a regular human being out there who could just socialize and not have any troubles. So I was having a lot of those struggles. It was both the dependency that was forming on the narcotics and then the loss of what I could do as an athlete and my identity. So there's a lot of messages growing up as you just go through the normal stuff of high school.
Wow. Yeah, seriously. And, as men, we are socialized to be tough and to not talk about our problems and to keep all of that sort of inside. Is that a pressure that you felt while you were going through this? Was there a piece of you that's just like wanting to burst out and say, hey, this is what's happening to me and I want to talk about it?
I think it was more that I was treated differently by family because they then said, hey, I was viewed as more delicate, right? And no guy wants to be viewed as delicate. And it was more a sense of, I didn't want to be perceived in one way as weak or delicate. At the same time, I also wanted people to appreciate what I was going through.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for people to wrap their head around that tension that exists there, that you don't want to be viewed with pity. At the same time, you do want some understanding. And I just think as a high school kid going through that, I didn't really have a way to verbalize that in an efficient manner.
Well said. Yeah, absolutely. How old were you when this happened with the doctor where they recommended the narcotics over the surgery?
So I just turned 17, And so it was late high school, and then I'll fast forward to college, where I did find a crew of people in my fraternity who just cared about me. For me, it was like the closest I ever felt with people. But as happens with narcotics that aren't well monitored, dependency grew and grew, and that was causing problems in my life because I was not showing up in the ways I needed to. And ultimately, that tied in with depression and some other things I was struggling with. And one day I had had enough, lined up 100 extra strength Vicodin, and was about 40 into trying to take my own life.
Wow.
And fortunately, I had a fraternity brother stumble upon my room at the moment, see what was going on, get me out of there without me figuring out what was going on. And they later staged intervention and basically got me the help I needed to work through that. But it was something where, again, very different time. Narcotics were not monitored the way they are today. So,
yeah, I mean, 20-ish years ago was sort of before this, narcotics crisis that we are still dealing with the ramifications of. And it really makes sense why your doctor would give you this advice back then. It seems like you harbor no ill will. I mean, I might be reaching here, but it seems to me like you harbor no ill will towards this doctor who prescribed this, medication versus surgery. It sounds like you're in a really tough position, and, who knows what the right choice is there. It sounds like you made the only choice that made sense to make at the time. But earlier than the narcotics crisis, when things weren't monitored as well, when the full ramifications of the addictive nature of these substances wasn't necessarily known on a societal level. And then here you are in the thick of that. I appreciate you sharing what you went through there as far as, 40 pills in deep. Once you get into there, it's like you're not thinking straight anymore, and you're not necessarily conscious of what's going on around you. And there's such a real danger there of things just spiraling out of control. And you're like right on that precipice. So grateful to have this friend who came in and pulled you out of that. So it sounds like they take you to the hospital, and then what happens from there?
So it actually wasn't a hospital. They just, think fraternity guy logic, right?
Okay.
Get some water, right? And get the pills away from him. But basically, a day later, they sat me down, my two closest friends, and said, you have leadership capacity on the board for this fraternity. You're going to step down immediately, or we're going to force you out. And this afternoon, you have like 2 hours to get home, because my college was about an hour from where I lived, to go tell your parents, or we're calling them to tell them for you. And they said, this is not optional. This is happening. We don't care if you never talk to us again. We're getting you the help you need.
Wow.
And so it was two guys I trusted completely, and two guys, one of which who had a brother who had substance issues and had been through some training in that capacity. And so I went home, told my parents. I went and I did straight old cold detox the way we used to do back in the day, days of hell. Got clean. And then came back to school. It didn't solve, obviously, the pain issues. Obviously, I had a whole new level of pain to deal with, but it was a fascinating experience because you learn how the narcotics trick your brain into thinking you need more pain pills than you really do.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting.
And then having that reflective moment as I'm going through and struggling, I was using it for more than just the pain in my back. I was using it to cope with societal pressures and trying to fit in and combat depression, and using that to alleviate those other things. So that it was a very helpful, life-saving wake-up call that opened up the door to a lot of healing in different ways that I never would have had I not gone through that.
Yeah, amazing. And wow, it sounds like these two guys are like real true friends who were willing to put their own friendship with you on the line to get you what you needed. How did you feel about them? Did this help or hurt your friendship?
It helped. To this day, they're my closest friends. And they even, I struggled with a lot of mental health issues for the next 6 or 7 years. And when I was struggling, they basically just said, we're leaving our cell phones on, and they will always be on at night. We're never going to turn them off. You can call at any hour. And that has continued until this day. They still never, even though people would say turn off your phone, for my benefit, they keep that phone on.
Mm.
And even despite their wife's pressure these days, they still do.
Wow, that sounds like such incredible friendships. I mean, life-saving friendship, really. And to have that support in that moment when you really needed it, when you don't even know that you need it because the pills are telling you otherwise. Like what an incredible stroke of luck to have.
Mm.
At this point, you have to go off the pills, and you mentioned this whole new level of pain. So you're in college. You're not having pain management at this point. You still have this kyphosis. How developed was the kyphosis at that point? I don't know the best way to describe that, if it's like by angle of curvature or...
It was about 60 degrees at the time.
Okay. And for someone like me who has no idea what normal is.
it's they're typically recommending surgery at that point.
Okay.
But what was interesting was that I hadn't really, we'd explored a lot of different alternatives, but once I took medication off the table, I really started looking at just a lot of different alternatives. What can I do to control my situation? Mm. What things can I bring to bear? What resources that I haven't looked at? And so I was able to find more relief than I thought I would. Even though structurally it's not like you can go backwards, but by the physical therapy, by some alternative methodologies, by self-care in different ways, I was able to cope better through some of that, and to the point now where even though my physical to get ready for the day, it takes about 90 minutes of work for me just to mobilize enough myself. Mm. But to this day, I can play golf again.
Wow.
I'm still hurt after it, but I can play the sport that I loved.
Yeah.
And so, again, it was that once I cut off the medication and had the right people around me, I opened my eyes to some alternatives and count myself one of the fortunate ones.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. I'd love to hear some specifics about these alternative methodologies that you discovered. I mean, for anyone else living with Scheuermann's disease or kyphosis out there, that seems like something that could be really helpful to hear.
Yeah, so there's a manual therapy called Rolfing, Rolfing, and it really works on the myofascial tissue. And chiropractors hate the Rolfing specialists because they're like, oh, if it's all about the adjustment, and I have nothing against chiropractors, but this has been very effective. They've seen tremendous results actually in teens with Rolfing, where they have actually been able to mitigate the kyphosis, and even with scoliosis, they've had a lot better success with scoliosis, but with those with kyphosis as well, while the kids are still growing before all the growth plates have closed. They've had really good success mitigating. And so there was a lot of that, a lot of working on conditioning in both the lower back, mobility work, and then even looking at the inflammation in my system, right? So much discomfort is also caused by inflammation. And so I eat a very low carb diet. I try and stay away from things that'll cause that inflammation. And then when I feel like candy and do some of those things, I obviously pay for it the next day. But it's been very helpful. But I will say that the most helpful has been the modalities like the Rolfing that are out there, and then just the regular physical therapy work that anyone would do.
Can you describe Rolfing for me a little bit more, as far as like what does the actual process look like?
So they put you on a table and imagine the most deep tissue massage you could ever get. But it's painful. And what they're doing is all around your muscles, and your structure is this like layer of fascia, and it's rigid, but it can be, if you grind it down enough, it's malleable. And what they have shown is over time, let's say if you, like for me, have a kyphosis, you favor certain sides. and your muscles, for lack of a better word, and your body gets stuck in certain positions. Well, it's not necessarily some of its structure, but a lot of it's tied to this myofascial tissue and your body coping to try and balance in a certain way. And they have a very methodical approach on how they go through. It's like a 10-step, 10 series process. I did probably 200 of them sessions, but they work on each aspect of the body, and it can be incredibly painful depending on the provider. It's not meant to be pleasant, but incredibly beneficial. And they're the first to tell you it's very different than massage. The intent is very different. And yeah, very successful.
Awesome. And are you taking any supplements or anything like that you would recommend as far as keeping that inflammation level down?
I take, have you heard of dose?
No.
So dose is like curcumin on steroids. And like I found it, oddly enough, a couple of years ago on Instagram, and it's very helpful. I also, for pain management, and this is more, there's a lot of debate on kratom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of kratom.
I have, yeah.
And because it acts on opioid receptors for pain management, there's a split. There's lobbyists in for and lobbyists against it. Obviously, I have found it incredibly helpful during those times when the pain is super significant to take that edge off. And I have not found the effects that others have had, and now there's probably reasons for that with the purity people get and whether it's mixed with something else. But between the dose for the anti-inflammatory and the kratom that I would take when the pain gets a bit more than bearable, those have been the two things that have been really helpful.
What form of kratom are you taking? I think if I'm remembering correctly, there's pills, but there's also a smokable form. Is that correct?
They have it in all sorts of forms. I take it in pill form, and there's also a zillion different strains, right? There's strains, and people use it for lots of different medicinal use cases. And I use this, it's called Red Bali. Obviously the strain is based upon where it's from, and it's just in a little capsule, and it's not expensive, and I don't have any real digestive problems from it. I'm guessing if people used it as just a regular solution, they probably could have some of that. But to me, I look at it, it's like when someone has a migraine and they need to take a lot of Tylenol or aspirin or something like that to get through that day. So
yeah, totally. I mean, everyone's body is different, and finding the thing that works for your individual body is so difficult, and it often takes so much trial and error. And it's something to be celebrated when you find the thing that works for you, especially in your case when, you are avoiding narcotics and avoiding surgery by all this work that you've done, which is so impressive. What is your curvature at now?
the last measurement they did, it was 68 degrees, I think it was.
Wow.
And the problem too is you have to, when they're measuring it, like there's still human error part of this process. And like I've noticed time of day, so it's give or take. And so while it's progressing slowly, I still feel comfortable enough, and I'm nowhere near having to crawl. And so the running joke as my high school kid is getting taller is I'm shrinking, but at least at a reasonable rate. So
yeah, wow, that's fascinating. So if you had chosen to do surgery back when this all started, what does that surgery look like?
So back in the day, it was a full spinal fusion, but they had to do it a unique way because of the kyphosis and scoliosis I'd have. And so it was like they'd go in through the front and apply, it's been so many years, but one part of the structure on the front side, one on the back side. So basically they just flip you over, and it was supposed to be this like 14-hour surgery. And obviously a lot can go wrong in a 14-hour surgery. And when the surgeon who does these type of surgeries for a living goes, Justin, can you walk still? Can you, when you're crawling, come in. So it was pretty intensive. Nowadays, they've got some different methodologies for surgery they didn't have 25 years ago, obviously.
Yeah.
And so it would be invasive, and it still involves a fusion. But from what I've seen from the few people I've talked to, it hasn't been nearly as impactful from a negative standpoint. So sometimes just biding your time enough until the technology catches up is a good thing.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking as you were describing that story. That's something I'd never really thought about, is if you're having a hard time deciding to get surgery or not, if you can wait, maybe the surgery technology will evolve while you're waiting. Who knows? Yeah, so interesting. You mentioned a couple times that in this period, like around college, post-college, that you had some mental health struggles. Are you comfortable sharing what that was with us?
Yeah, so ultimately I was diagnosed with type 2 bipolar. And so I'm going to give bad examples here. The classic type 1 that everyone would recognize, type 1 bipolar, would be what you see with Kanye West. He's talked openly about his bipolar at times, and he has struggled with his mental health at different times, but he is the classic case. Type 2 is you still have highs and lows. You have the high manic stages and where you're working crazy and you can go on very little sleep, but it's not days on end of no sleep, and your lows of depression aren't quite as low as the type 1. And so when I was going through this and discovering, I've got this, they had actually misdiagnosed me just with ADHD because there's like a close relationship between the two. And so type 2 bipolar, and I had another fraternity brother who was a therapist, and as I was struggling with one medication for just regular depression, he started asking me questions, and he says, go talk to your brother and ask him these questions. Don't give him any context, and then come back to me with the answers. Go back. And he says, Justin, I want you to go to your psychiatrist. I want you to take these answers and give them to him. And I'll tell you later what you have, but I want you to go to your psychiatrist. And he goes, yeah, you got type 2 bipolar. And he was able to spot it based upon my side effects to the medication that I was having. And so there is a pill that I took for a while that is really used for seizures that works with people with type 2 bipolar. And it was helpful in kind of just mellowing that out. And then I was just doing a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy to get myself in the right headspace. And ultimately, that same therapist that helped figure that out with me, he helped me launch my mental health nonprofit, where we do all this training for people that are struggling with mental health and getting them the resources they need. Because, as you know, whether you're someone struggling with chronic illness or mental illness, you're going down rabbit holes trying to find any relief, any solution. You don't know where to turn and whether Google's telling you the right answer. And so we said, enough, let's go and equip some people with some real information.
Wow, cool. Yeah, tell me more about your nonprofit.
Yeah, so our nonprofit Project 55 exists solely to get two things done. One, provide training for lay people to step in when others are in crisis. So if you can think about, there's 14 major life events: death, divorce, chronic illness, loss of life in the family, all these different type of things people go through. And we all have to step in at times. But most people, when I would speak at my conferences on mental health, said, I just don't have the words. I don't know what to say. And so our training really teaches people how to step in these 14 different life scenarios, but also how to identify when someone's at crisis, and when someone's in crisis, the steps to take to get them to safety, to get them the right resources. And then we provide a comprehensive resource library, and all of our training, all of our resources is completely free. So we don't ask for donations. We don't want any of that. It's just really trying to get the help people need, because right now, 55% of people are struggling with mental health disorder and don't have any help coming their way. You're waiting 8 weeks to get into a therapist, 12 weeks. And if you're severely depressed, that's far too long to go without some assistance. And so that's what we do. We've trained about 1,500 people over the past 4 months, and we continue to go from there.
Wow, that's incredible. Over the past 4 months, is this a relatively new thing?
Yeah, so we finished the training in June and then just launched it in July. And so we just started out. We first made it available in the insurance space, which is where I play right now for my vocation, and then just opened it up from there and been rocking and rolling.
That's so cool. I mean, you really have overcome a lot, and it seems like it has shaped who you are in a way. It has sort of forced you to take a look at your own identity, first from like not being able to play golf, and then, all the ways in which this has shaped your life and forced you to do different things. But it seems like you've come out on the other side of that with new passions and with this desire to help people. It seems like it's really changed you. And it sounds to me like in some really positive ways. Is that something that you've spent some time thinking about, how this, unfortunate diagnosis early on in life has shaped your life in a way that maybe was beneficial?
Yeah, it's funny. I struggled at times with the victim mentality. And then if you look back long enough and you see kind of the road, you're like, oh, wait, this served me in this way. This served me in this way. And I heard a great quote once from Will Smith, and I know he was in the news a couple of years ago for, something he didn't want to be in the news for, but
Yeah.
he had a YouTube video where he talked about, not having excuses and not having a victim mindset. And he said, you can't control what happens to you, but you do have a responsibility to heal. And through that responsibility to heal is where you find your power and your growth and success. And that always resonated with me, that it doesn't matter whether you were bullied, whether some other catastrophic life event happened. Life does happen to you, but you have that responsibility to heal. And for me, part of my growth journey was, I had a counselor once challenge me, well, how healed do you want to be? I said, what do you mean? How healed do I want to be? Of course I want to be healed. He goes, do you? Because it sounds like there's some benefits to you not being healed, at least as far as the narrative you tell yourself when you fall short, and the reasons and all those things that stack up. And so that was kind of that light bulb moment to me. So I would say, yes, it's been incredibly valuable. I wouldn't change a thing other than the people that got hurt along the way as I was going through different struggles. But fortunately, my boo-boos at that time and infringements on those people were more inconveniences versus really, really harmful behavior. So it's just been a great growth journey, and it took a lot of support from friends, but I'm grateful I had that.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated when people have gone through such difficult things and then come out the other side saying, I wouldn't change a thing. And I feel the same way about my own journey, which I still, whenever I have a flare up, I'm like, why do I feel this way? But I do. I mean, I'd be such a different person without it. So we've heard a lot about these amazing friends that really got you through this difficult time. It sounds like you've had incredible support throughout this journey. And I'd love to hear how this has interwoven with your family life. You've talked about your kids. I'm curious about, like dating and then having kids and then being a father while managing all of these struggles at the same time. How has that been for you?
Well, it's funny. I married my friend from high school. She and I dated each other's best friends in high school, and then we kind of disconnected from those friends. And it was something that she knew of, the struggle I had, and it was a concern of mine. I said, what happens as this thing progresses? I don't want anyone to sign up for a life like that. And she just basically spoke hope and said, why are we going down that rabbit hole? Right? This is, if we're talking marriage, this is for better or for worse. And there's a lot of for betters that come along with this. And so she's been an advocate of mine along the way. Not to say that there's not challenges. I think the bigger challenges are, as a parent, you need to be able to have a lot of good days and great energy for your kids. And there's just days where it's not there, and young kids don't understand it. And even when they're in high school and their hormones are raging and life is changing from them, when they see dad a little less patient sometimes because he's in pain, or my daughter, she got on my case because like I struggle to get my socks on. I have to kind of like sit down at a weird angle, and she said, you always turn your face away from me when you're putting your socks on if I'm ever in the room.
Mm.
And she's like, I know there's pain there. So why are you hiding it? And my daughter's 18, so she's old enough to have this conversation with me, but she's like, you're not sheltering me from it. You may be convincing yourself that I'm not seeing you struggle to get your socks on. But just, I think it's been the everyday struggles, whether a person is struggling with life, pain, work issues. It's just another challenge that comes along with parenting.
Yeah. Wow. Did this change anything for you? This discussion with your daughter about looking away when you put your socks on?
I would say it just made me more aware that they're more aware of my bad days than I think they are. And so I'm trying to be better about calling those out and saying, yeah, today's not a good day, and doing it before, let's say there's a shortness in me, right? Or there's less patience, because they shouldn't have to play investigator to know dad's in pain to make sure it's not about them why dad's frustrated. And so that was the little adjustment I've tried to make is, okay, if I'm really in this spot, I should say it to them so they know. Doesn't excuse if I'm ever short with anybody, but at least they're not trying to figure out as a child of mine, is dad mad at me? Or is he frustrated with mom? Is it what's going on? They just go, oh yeah, he's just in pain.
Yeah, that's so important. What a great lesson to learn. And something that I've also struggled through myself of, if I'm having a bad pain day and I'm, snapping at my partner, it's like, we got to have a conversation about it. It's like, I need to have the presence of mind to recognize that I'm being a dick and to, and to tell her, oh, I'm so sorry. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. And there was many times when we were dating that, we just got married almost exactly a year ago. Many times we were dating where she's like, I thought that it was about me, or I thought that you were mad at me. It's like, no, it's not about you. It's I'm having a bad pain day. And then once I connected those things, I was able to sort of do it in real time. And if I found myself lashing out because of my pain, and just because she's the only person nearby, as I'm in pain, then recognizing in the moment, oh, I'm so sorry. That had nothing to do with you. I'm having a bad pain day. Please excuse my bad attitude,
100%.
But we need to be able to have a bad attitude on bad pain days. That's, something that is important, I think. I wish it weren't, but the ways that chronic pain impacts us is unpredictable, and it's complex, and it changes from day to day. And it's a process of learning how to live with it and how to deal with it and how to accept it and how to, have it impact your behavior less and less over time. But that is a lifelong journey that, after a while, you maybe develop some gratitude to be on that journey at all, but that takes some time for sure. So it's important to have people around you that care for you and love you and have patience for you. And it sounds like you have that in abundance, which is really, really wonderful. Wow. I mean, what a thought-provoking conversation today. You've been through so much, and it's shaped you in such an incredible way. And now here you are giving back to the world. And I'm so interested that of all the challenges you've faced, and there's sort of three distinct things that we've talked about here. There's the Scheuermann's disease with this chronic pain. There's the taking narcotics and becoming dependent on that. And then, I mean, would you consider that you were addicted at that point?
100%.
Yeah. So we have this addiction that you had to deal with and then broke through and came out on the other side of. And then on top of that, the mental health challenges, type 2 bipolar. And it sounds like dealing with the crisis of identity that comes with a diagnosis that takes you away from what you love. And I'm so interested that Project 55 is what came out of that, where the mental health piece is what you've really sort of dedicated yourself to trying to make a change in. When you're challenged in the ways that you have been, you know more personally and deeply than anyone in the world what you would have liked as far as the support that you would have liked to have, or maybe the holes that you see existing in the system that we live within, you know, both societally and with healthcare. And I'm getting the impression that the mental health challenges, that's where you're like, okay, we need to change things. This is not good enough, what we have going on right now. Is that how you'd categorize it yourself? Like, this is where I feel like I want to give back to the community the most, is the mental health piece?
It really stemmed from, I was talking about a year and a half, 2 years ago at a conference, and I was speaking on mental health, and people knew I was going to speak on it at the conference. And I had 5 different people who had lost someone to suicide at a conference of 4,000 people. And the conference, keep in mind, it's an insurance conference. It's not a mental health conference. That's a pretty high number. And then so many others, and just it was the conversations of, this is the need, and it was, I'm equipped because I teach for a living, and I've got an education company that I can bring resources to bear. I have access to experts on the mental health side. Yeah, I am not one myself. And boy, wouldn't it be nice to have a paint by numbers approach. I'm uniquely equipped with this kind of trifecta of resources at my disposal, and the need is massive. So it was the most demanded thing that was happening when I would talk at conferences and speak with individuals was, you know, we need help. I can't get help. I don't know where to go. I feel so much shame, or I've just lost somebody. And so it was really that said, okay, this is what we're doing, and we're not just going to be advocates. We're going to come up with a solution.
Awesome. It's so cool. I love it so much. It's almost like the universe kind of directed you in this one specific direction. And I'm assuming that when you mentioned 55% of the population is dealing with mental health struggles, I'm assuming that's where the name comes from, Project 55, sort of this implicit, we are going to lower this number by fighting back. That's very cool. I'm so impressed. I just applaud everything you're doing, and what an incredible journey you've been through. I have one more question for you. If you could go back in time when you first got your diagnosis, you know, here's this guy who's golfing again. And then if you could go back in time and talk to young you who is facing losing this thing that you love because of your health in this way that is just so cosmically unfair, is there a message you'd bring back in time to yourself?
I think it would be, it's too early to judge whether this is a good or a bad thing. The lesson I learned in life that I keep learning, I wish I would just know it permanently, is that I've often judged things too soon as whether they were good or bad for my life or those around me. And it really would be that perspective of, you've got to give whatever that life circumstance is, 6 months, a year, sometimes a decade, to see whether it was truly for your benefit or it was just a hurdle you had to overcome. And so being able to just take a more long view of whatever adversity you face before judging it as a negative, because in a lot of ways, as kind of we've recapped here, it's been a very positive force propelling me forward and enabled me to be there in ways I never could have had I not been able to tap into what that struggle was.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm so glad to hear that you're golfing again. And it's interesting to think about this young guy who was on this path to maybe being like going pro, and how much you must have wanted that, and how exciting that must have been, and people in your life saying you have this gift and you're going this direction. And then to have that taken away, to not be able to golf at all, but then to come back to it later in life, to be able to do it in any capacity just for the joy of it, must be really powerful.
It is. And there are no bad days on a golf course. When I see people getting upset, to me, I'm out there, the sun is shining. And I will say this, just in case anyone's listening, I do not think I would have turned pro. I had several friends turn pro that were better than me, and they got their butt kicked on the mini tour. So, the ceiling was lower for me, but I now do truly appreciate every time I get out there and I'm comfortable with the pain I'm going to endure the next few days afterwards, because the joy of just being out there and being with people, right? It's just another opportunity to be with people and get to experience their ups and downs on a course. So it's fun, and I'm very blessed.
Yeah, I wonder if you appreciate golf more in this version of your life than you would have in the version where you never deal with health challenges and you go pro. Let's just say that you go pro, just for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
And that is your whole life is just golf. I wonder if this version of you appreciates golf more.
This person does, and I can tell you based on a few of the retired professionals that I've talked to, they said, Justin, it was such a blessing for you that your career ended earlier, because there's a bigger struggle that takes place for the guys who are fighting to make it for years on end. Their whole life gets delayed and moving on to whatever's next. And he said, you got to then experience being a young dad and getting to coach Little League and do all these different things. And I think they're right. And so I very much think I would have had a different lens on it had I not gone through this. And now I just get to go and enjoy the scenery, and I make a bad shot, I laugh it off. I don't care.
Yeah, amazing. Justin, this has been just an incredible conversation today. There's been so many thought-provoking things that you've said. It's some stuff that's really going to stick with me. I'm excited to go back and listen to this again, because there's just some real, kernels of wisdom all throughout that I really, really appreciate. If anyone is interested in checking out Project 55, where do we go? And of course, if there's anything else you'd like to plug or share, please direct our listeners towards it.
Awesome. Well, I've loved every minute of this conversation. If anyone wants resources for themselves or to learn how to step in, if anyone's in need, go to project55.org, and our training and resources are absolutely free to you, your friends, your cousin, even your uncle you don't like. It is sitting out there. It's online, self-paced, at your disposal. And the last thing I'll mention, in the mental health community, one thing we're trying to get out these days is the crisis hotline. Most people have typically referred to it as a suicide hotline, but what most people don't know is that 988 is also a crisis hotline. So if you're in crisis, meaning contemplating taking your own life, or even just struggling severely, feeling massive despair, they're not going to hang up on you if you call. There's trained therapists. They're not going to charge you a dime. They are sitting, waiting for your call. A lot of them have to book a certain number of hours every year and are going to be just waiting on that phone anyway. So it might as well be you. And some of the most powerful things you can do, or one of the most powerful things you can do just as an individual, is upload in your context 988 crisis hotline, so that even if you aren't trained, but you see someone spiraling, all you have to do is dial 988, and someone who is an expert can get on the phone and help navigate that process.
Amazing. Wow. Justin, thank you so much for coming on the Major Pain Podcast. What an incredible episode. Great conversation. I'm thrilled to meet you. I'm so impressed with the work you're doing. It is so important. Thank you for supporting the mental health community. I mean, this is such important work, and the fact that these resources you're putting out there are free and available is how things should be. So thank you for doing that. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Major Pain. I'm Jesse Mercury, the creator of this podcast, with support from Trisha Schmidt and Casey McKenzie. Artwork by Egg Salad Salad. Our theme music is the song Time Machine from my synth-pop album Sci-Fi, now streaming everywhere. Join our community on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at Major Pain Podcast. If you have questions or comments you'd like to share with myself, our guests, or our listeners, send an email to majorpainpodcast@gmail.com. You can also head to our website to learn more about this show, support its creation, or leave a comment on any episode at majorpainpodcast.com.